That is the United States Olympic team that won the gold in what is the team competition. So what that means is each member of that team had to get out on the ice and perform their routine, and they had to get it precision perfect to win points. And whoever had the highest points of all the teams competing won. And so, of course, many of them, the blonde-haired guy with the American flag wrapped around his shoulders, Ilya Milan, I think it's, or Milani, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He went head-to-head with one of the Japanese figure skaters because it came down to him and the other guy. The other teams were kind of somewhat evenly matched. And it also came down to who could perform the best, who could actually get that precision where the judges needed it. Obviously, Team USA won. But what's important about that is that each person had to follow through on their part of the job. Each person had to kind of follow up on what the other person had done. And each person had to count on the other and not let the team down. It was a nail biter. I remember watching it, but those are the best kind of games. That's important because their victory is what kind of gave the rest of the figure skaters who were not part of that team, but some of them were individuals, kind of gave them that little extra oomph to get out there and do their best as well. That's known as a moment of truth. We talked about that last Wednesday night, right? Well, the moment of truth, it came down to who could do the job the best and follow through for the team. Well, David faced his moment of truth when he ran towards the battle in his battle against Goliath. It's a reminder for us tonight that there are some battles that simply have to be fought. You cannot go around it, you can't go over it, you can't go under it, you got to face up to it. There are some giants facing you that you simply got to stare them down. And as I said last time, take the shot. And then he passed his moment of truth. David did not shy away. He ran to the battle using a shepherd's sling, which I think speeds can get up easily to about roughly 150 miles an hour or more, depending on how expert you are. When you've got God's power on you, God is blessing you, then that sling is going to give that stone a whole heap of power, and that rock hit Goliath between the eyes, 9 feet, 9 inches tall, monster of a man, and he was dead on arrival when he hit the ground. There was no knocking him out. There was no stunning him. It was cranial trauma. And so David followed through on that. He acted by faith, and God granted David the victory. And then, as the next shot, I finally found one. I wanted a little shock and awe tonight. Yes, he cut his head off. Used the giant's own sword to do that. You might say it added insult to injury. But that's not the end of the story. You see, what happened was that in that moment, because of what David was willing to do and what David was able to do, it was inspiring to the rest of his team, or in this case, the army. And it would become instrumental in not just the defeat of a giant, but in the defeat of the enemy. And so let's take a look at that tonight. Always remember that in your life, your follow-up and your follow-through is important. That's true in sports, it's true in academics, it's true in the work world, and I promise you it is true in church life and in ministry as well. So number one, David's victory was inspiring. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 52. If you have that, and turn there. If not, just pay attention. Now, when the men of Israel and Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines as far as the entrance of the valley and to the gates of Ekron, and the wounded of the Philistines fell along the road to Shaaraim, even as far as Gath and Ekron. In other words, there's a whole heap of dying and dead people all along the way. And one of the things we take away from that is that David's courageous faith and action inspired fearful, timid men to become warriors of God. Okay, that's no small feat. to take a group of people who are scared to death and have been taking verbal abuse for days and days and days, knowing that this can't just go on forever, but more than likely we're going to die. And suddenly they're giving chase to the enemy and they're killing them along the way. That's pretty impressive. They got to see, that is the Israelites, the army, and David's own family, who were part of the army, they got to see God at work in and through the life of David. And as Dr. Henry Blackaby, and I don't expect y'all to know who he is, but some of the adults probably do. He's the one that wrote the Bible study series known as Experiencing God. If you ever get a chance to read it, check it out. It's amazing. It's awesome. 30-something years old, still fresh. Okay? And so Blackaby would say, when you see God at work, that's your invitation to come and join him. God is the one putting the Philistines on the run, but basically through David saying, come on guys, catch up. I'm not the only one. Y'all go ahead and get in the game. And that's exactly what they did. The Bible tells us in Psalm 60 verse 12, with God we will perform with valor, and he will trample our enemies. Remember that David's faithfulness inspired a wholehearted, no half measures. In other words, when they got ready to fight, they were all in. I mean, you don't give chase to somebody all the way, killing as you go, if you're just going to be halfway or half-hearted about that. The Bible tells us in Psalm 44, verse 5, through you, that is God, we repel our foes. Through your name, we trample our enemies. Now, there was an earlier picture of track. We can put that back up on the screen. I still love the gory picture. That's just amazing. Of course, you got to know the way I think. The more blood, the better. But anyway, it goes back to my childhood and teenage years. But that is a story for another time. All right, anyway, with that said, there was a track meet. Yes, a track illustration. But for those of you who run track, you might find this interesting. Okay, there was a track meet. And there was a long-distance runner who, well, let's just say he gave out. No, not me. I was in the stands, okay? Other people who were running, they ran by him, they lapped him. You know, when you get lapped in a 1,300-meter run, that's not good. You know, you get lapped the first time, well, okay, good deal. You get lapped 3 or 4 times, it's almost like, what's the point? In fact, there were some really mean-mouthed people up in the stands shouting at this guy. I remember he was tall, lanky, and red-headed, like, get off the track. Or was he short and stuff? I was, anyway, somebody on the track. You know, like, get off the track. It's all over. You're no good. I'm like, really? Who does that at a track meet? You won't hear me do it at a track meet. But anyway, so I was a little put out with that, but they weren't my people. Wasn't my circus, wasn't my monkey, so I really couldn't do much about it until I got enough of it. But anyway, he was running. The race is over. I'm like, the boy's just going to quit. And then he actually slowed to a crawl. He was walking. He was holding his side. I mean, I'm like, dude, why are you out there? I kind of like, yeah, just walk off the track. Everybody would understand. But he kept walking. He kept going. And then he would jog a little bit. I'm like, man, I thought he was going to have a heart attack. I mean, he really looked that bad. And suddenly I noticed his team, I guess it was about getting into those last 2 laps, they come alongside him on the field, and they're cheering him on, and they're encouraging him, and they walk with him, and then when he jog, they jog with him. They got him to the last lap. And then I'm like, that is impressive. The race is over, but he hasn't quit. And it gets better. Because when he got into that last curve, getting ready for that last straightaway, they were really starting to hoop and holler and cheer. And he left them behind and he sprinted all the way. I stood and I applauded and I hollered, all you got! All you got! Oh yeah, that race was over. He didn't win the ribbon that day, but he was faithful. See, his coach did not send him to win, although that would have been nice. But his coach sent him there with his team to compete. And he did not want to let his team down. And so as a result, when he crossed the finish line, I think that was more impressive than the other running machines I saw out there. Follow up and follow through. is important. Your courageous faith and action against the giants that are facing you may inspire others to stop being timid and get in the game, or to take action themselves. You win by being faithful. Okay, you may not always get the big trophy. You might not get the championship ring. You might not get the 3 medals that I have hanging in my office at home. Back in the day, okay, I used to tease my class, walk in, because half of my class ran track, and I said, how many medals? Count them. And they all got a little irritated, so they got out there, and then the last time I was around any of my students, some of the girls and guys were coming to me, oh, we got 5. Oh, we got 6. And I said, made you get out there and do it. You know, if I encouraged and inspired you, made you mad enough to compete, awesome! Something must have clicked. Well, anyway, your example can help others. You win by being faithful, period. So the question I would challenge you with tonight about, when we think about David's victory was inspiring, is, well, simple as this. How are you following up? And how are you following through? But the last one, David's victory was instrumental. And I'm not suggesting he's out there playing a trumpet, okay, or beating a drum. That's not it at all. Instrumental means important, okay? In verse 53 it says, then the children of Israel returned from chasing the Philistines, and they plundered their tents. Now get this. They have chased them. They have killed them. Now they're coming back home, okay? And they're going to go into the tents of the enemy that left all that stuff behind, and that's the spoils of war, okay? So these guys are coming back not as victims with their head hung down. These guys are coming back as victors, okay? That is important. David's action restored some pride to that army, because they saw, hey, we can do this. And then David's faithfulness was a turning point for the army. David's action was a turning point for the life of King Saul, even though Saul wasn't necessarily going to enjoy that turning point, but it is a turning point. And it's a turning point for the life of David, because David's life will not go back to same old after that, okay? When you face the giants that are facing you, and you stand up to them, and God gives you the victory over them, your life ain't ever going to be the same. It's going to be different. Now, it may be better, or sometimes it may be even more difficult, but I promise you that it's doable. General John Buford was a general in the Battle of Gettysburg, day 1. Here's his great contribution. Did he lead sweeping armies across the field? No, well, he had an army, but he didn't do that. He's the one who identified on day 1 2 high points, Cemetery Ridge and Cemetery Hill, and said, we've got to take the high ground. If we're going to win this fight, we got to take the high ground. And that's what he did. That was his contribution. He followed through. And he was able to help others win the bigger battle, because he was faithful to take what action he could. As we wrap this up tonight, your courageous faith and action transforms you, and it transforms those around you. You are victors. You don't ever have to live as a victim. Never live as a victim. You are more than an overcomer in Jesus Christ. So don't ever treat yourself or let others treat you as a victim in life. You are a victor. Remember that. Your faithfulness responding to the giants can be a turning point. And the way ahead probably will be difficult, but it will be doable. No, in all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. Romans 8:37. And then 1 Corinthians 15. But thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. So you've wondered, well, how did the rest of that go down? Well, David takes Goliath's head, and he takes it to Jerusalem, and I'm suspecting that it was shown to everybody, because sometimes you just got to make a statement. And then David takes Goliath's armor back to his tent. Eventually that sword will be at the temple, well, not temple, the tabernacle, the tent, worship tent at Shiloh for a while. However, eventually David is going to take that sword and use it for his own, because there's no sword like that. So David got to enjoy the fruit of his victory, and you can too. As we stand and sing our hymn of invitation, I have decided to follow Jesus. I invite you to make a decision. Maybe you need to face whatever giant is facing you. I don't know what that giant may be, but you can face it with Jesus Christ. But in order to do that, you've got to know Jesus Christ. So if you don't know Christ, nail it down. And if you do, maybe you just need to come and pray. Sometimes the way we face giants is not so much draw the sword or throw the stone, okay? It begins us being on our knees before God. You respond as Jesus would have you respond.